What's up, Leafs fans, and welcome back to Leafs Digest. And as I'm sure you can tell, as I'm sure you're also just as fed up as I am, this is the last night with this absolute horse manure computer. This thing is going in the dumpster tomorrow morning because this is trash. I don't know what to say. I'm sorry, guys. I don't know what the hell is going on, but this is just absolute garbage. So if this one ends up being an audio only live recap, I seriously apologize. This thing, that's it. I don't even know what to say here, Giddy. I don't know if you able to see what the heck is going on my end, if you have any idea, but yeah, this is just getting absurd. I don't know what to do. I'm done. I'm done. That's it. With this computer, maybe I'm done with this Leafs team, man. Game 1, and I might be done already. I might be out. I'm Goody. You know what? Hard for Bedard. That's what it is at this point.
Hey, man, the computer and the Leafs have some miles on them now, and we're starting to look at them like it might be time for change, both of them. Might be an audio only app, but hey, we can get right to the point with talking about what happened. And, first off, got to give you big kudos for shouldering the preseason load with the channel. Of course, everyone kept tuning in for content. Obviously I've been really busy with work. I know, Phil, you filled everyone in on why I wasn't here,
Yeah.
multitude of reasons, but hey, man, that wasn't the opening night we hope to come back to. That was really tough. I hope you didn't put your paper bag away, Phil. That's I really don't know what to say. There was certain parts of the game where I was honest, I'm seeing some negativity about Matt Murray in the comments. I really don't think he was the issue tonight. It boils down to some centerpieces for me, and Sheldon Keefe is a guy that comes back to mind. I think Muzzin, obviously, there turning it over to Anderson after a blocked shot. Like, we can break down the game from where you want to start, but man, there's a lot to unpack here.
Yeah, so let's just go over what kind of the basic rundown of the game, what happened here. So starting up, I mean, Leafs obviously lose game 1 of the season to the Habs here, 4-3. You're leading most of the way in terms of holding on to that one later, and then the Habs take the lead in the third period there. Managed to tie that one up late off a goal off of William Nylander, and then Josh Anderson, as he usually does against the Toronto Maple Leafs, just an absolute heartbreak goal against. I got to say, there's in terms of a few things with what happened in this game. First of all, it is actually to the point of ridiculousness with the NHL starting these games when they do, because the MLB says first pitch is at 7:07. Goody, can you guess what time first pitch happens at?
7:07.
And the NFL says primetime game starts at 8:20. Can you guess what time primetime NFL game starts at?
I'm going to guess 8:20.
Yeah, you'd be right. NHL says the game starts at 7:30. Can you guess what time the NHL starts at?
A lot later than that. I was tuning in. I was like a little bit late to the game, and I was like, oh, I haven't missed anything. This is...
No, you give yourself basically like a 20 to 25 minute grace period, and you're probably going to be okay to still catch the beginning of the game, the opening act. It doesn't even matter that it's Habs season opener. That's happening no matter what rink you're in, because the NHL just cannot start on time, cannot figure that one out for the life of them. So quite unfortunate from that perspective. But it obviously started a little bit slow with it, just from both aspects. The game started a little bit slow, was a little bit broken up. But I cannot give the Leafs the excuse of, oh, well, there was all this waiting. Like, the Habs dealt with it too. The Habs waited. They're the ones who are on home ice. They're all antsy to get going here. If anything, it would be them who would have the weirder start or the tougher start to this. And now I'm not saying that from the perspective of, like, oh, can the Leafs? Like, what the hell are they doing out there? It's more just about, like, it's just a slow game to start with in general. As far as the goals go and the goals scored, that first goal, what a play by Marner. I mean, goes behind the net, the little spinorama to shake the guy off, comes back outside out the other way. Like, he put the guy in the spin cycle behind the net, comes back out and makes a brilliant tape-to-tape pass with Bunting out front, who's able to put it in. that play was incredible, and Michael Bunting starting the season off with a goal. Rumors broke today that Michael Bunting is willing to start looking at a contract extension during this season, and they would be looking or be interested in approximately 8-year contract for him to be able to continue on as a Toronto Maple Leaf. That's obviously good news, especially considering what he did last year, and starting tonight off with a goal is good stuff. But that is a great way to start the game. Great way for him to start his season as well.
Yeah, it was awesome. And I don't know if you remember this, but in the office today, I said to you, Michael Bunting anytime.
You did.
I mean, the amount of bets that I've verbalized but never ended up placing, I'd be a rich man by now or a broke man. It's always hindsight 2020. But yeah, man, what a great way for him to start the season. Michael Bunting's been as steady as they come. And it's great to hear he's open to talking contract now, because clearly this guy wants to be a Leaf. And if I can read Michael Bunting properly, I think he'll do it at least a appropriate rate, not like a ridiculous discount, but he doesn't seem like a guy that's going to nickel and dime the management in Toronto, because obviously he knows they're in a win now period. How long that period lasts, I don't know. I hope at least for a few more years to come. But Michael Bunting is going to be a key part of it if it is a window that stays open. So happy to hear that the negotiations are at least looking like they could be around the corner, because I love Bunting personally.
Yeah, I love him too. I love everything he brings, from his energy to the actual skill and the IQ that he has. He had some interesting plays here tonight. The one I looked to in general that was very evident ended up with him actually getting benched by Sheldon Keefe for a little period of time, where Alex Kerfoot ended up coming out instead of him. Was the Cole Caufield goal. I believe it was the Caufield's first goal of the game, the 2-1 goal, or actually, no. That was the second goal of the game to tie the game up at 2-1, right after Dennis Maugan had just missed on the breakaway and hit the post. And it was Michael Bunting enters the zone, just gets across the blue line, goes to drop it back to Austin Matthews, who was there, but it was just a bad, ill-advised drop pass that obviously ends up not making it tape to him. And Sheldon Keefe quickly sends a message, hey, you're going to do stuff like that. You took a penalty earlier in the first period. You've done some kind of dumb things at this point, where he was just trying to be a little too pretty with it. You're not going to get to go out and play every single shift, because, hey, we're here to win and we're here to be a good team, and you're going to learn your lessons. And at this point in game one, I'm okay with him doing that. I don't think it's a problem, but he did just have an interesting game all around. So him still being able to get onto the board there, I'm at least happy for him to be able to do that. And he did say, by the way, in that quote, in that interview, whatever it was that he did today, Toronto is home. So he'd obviously like to be here, and that's a good sign. That's good to hear from him. So we'll see. We'll see how it plays out.
That's just the new free agency quote, eh? Austin saying Toronto's home, make of it what you will. Bunting now echoing that. I'll take it as a good sign, but I'm not going to believe it until I see it on paper. But obviously, I'd love to see both those guys re-up long-term.
Yes, we would obviously love to see both of them here. And then I don't know if you noticed, but there was something going around about Colby Armstrong asking Austin Matthews about where he'd like to retire. I'm like, guys, he's 25 years old. What are we doing asking him where he'd like to retire? We're getting a little ahead of ourselves on that one there. So weird one. Goody, I don't know if you just saw the comments in the chat. Dan Freeman says, at Leafs Digest, who's this other guy, Philly? Oh, Goody, nice to see you again, man. Let's go. Bad first game, but we aren't worried. No, we aren't worried.
Hey, I got to apologize as well. It's probably hard to make out who I am right now with my camera quality. I tried to plug in my webcam here, but I got my charger plugged in as well, and I only got so many ports in this thing right now. That's my apologies. We're a bootleg stream tonight. The Leafs came out with a bootleg performance. We're bootleg right now with our production, but we'll get it running smooth.
Yeah, I have no idea what to do about my computer at this point. I'm kind of just... This is actually different levels of frustration. I don't even know. I'm trying everything in the background here to try and fix some stuff and see if I could change anything at all, make it any different. It doesn't seem to be changing anything. So apologies, guys, for the laggy video that you got going on. Hopefully the audio is clear. I think it should be, but we'll find out. We'll find out when we watch this one back in the morning. All right, let's dig into some of the other stuff here. one of the goals that was scored by a guy that I kind of brought up that ended up turning the other way when he didn't end up scoring, and it goes down for a Cole Caufield goal shortly after, was Dennis Maugan. Dennis Maugan led the preseason, or tied for the NHL lead in preseason points with 8. He had 4 goals in the preseason, and he starts off tonight with a goal. It was a great hockey IQ play by him, a smart hockey IQ play by him. It was a good zone entry by the Leafs. John Tavares kicks it over to William Nylander, and let me finish this, and I got to read a comments in the chat. Nylander fires shot on net. Tavares and Dennis Maugan both crashing the net. Tavares gets rebound, fires it out front. Dennis Maugan, right place, right time, not going past the net, past the slot, able to bang home that rebound and put it in. That guy has looked pretty good. I'm going to refer to him this year. I don't know if you saw my Instagram story that I put out the other day, Goody. My guy, Evgeny Malgin. Gino Maugan. So he's looked good, and I do want to get into this conversation because you weren't here for it in the preseason, so it was something interesting to discuss. It ended up getting actually fairly intense in the chat, but I made a prediction. Nick Robertson will not be a full-time player on this Leafs team this season, and I'm going to say right now, watching Dennis Maugan, how confident he looked with the puck, the decisions he was making, how much he was possessing the puck tonight, some of the moves he was making, and the fact that he was able to get on the board, he's going to make it very hard for that to be likely for Nick Robertson. And part of it is more just, it's more about how tough it's going to be for Nick Robertson to get in this lineup, and less so about the type of player that he is. I'm kind of interested to hear your thoughts, but before I give it off to you, I'm just going to say my final argument on this is I don't think it's that Nick Robertson isn't a good player or won't be a good player. I don't think it's that Nick Robertson can't be an everyday NHLer. My point on the entire thing is that he doesn't bring a single thing that's different to this Leafs lineup today, tomorrow, next week than what they already have. He does not change the outlook of this team, and if he cannot change the outlook of this team, he should not and will not be in this lineup this season. And my point is not we need to trade Nick Robertson, but my point is if the deal comes along that's right, that makes sense, and you're willing to do, then you look to move on from Nick Robertson, because if you can get a piece in return that can change your team, you do it. What are your thoughts on this, Goody?
Okay, I agree with the latter half where, if the right trade comes about, I don't really think there's a few people who would be off the table, but for the most part, I'd be willing to explore trading any player for the Leafs because, adding something to what? A team that's gotten booted out of the first round, a team that still drops gimme games, a team that really doesn't have like a set identity. I say that as a Leafs fan, like they need to get something sort of ingrained as a culture and a reputation, and they don't have that whatsoever. Very highly skilled team, and that's apparent. And I think that's where you're coming from is that, okay, if we do need a culture ingrained, it's not going to be a highly skilled, undersized forward like Nick Robertson who's going to do it. I get that, and I'm definitely down to trade him in the right deal, but I still stand by saying he should have had a shot a little bit earlier, because this team's never been perfect. Our bottom six gotten better over the past couple seasons, but again, it's never been really where it needed to be. And I think Nick Robertson, okay, I understand there was an injury last season that probably took out his primetime opportunity to do so, but I do think he's been robbed a little bit of an opportunity with the Leafs. I could point to certain durations of time, but overall, I just think a lot of other teams that are winning in the NHL would have found a way to get him in the lineup. I know your argument is super team specific where you're saying his style is just not going to fit. I get it. But then again, you bring in a guy like Dennis Maugan, who's like 5'10" on a good day and a skill forward. And for the record, I liked Maugan. I thought him and Obey Kubel did a good job tonight. Some of the first time I'm seeing them play, I thought they both looked good, or at least worthy of being on the ice. But I don't know. We haven't really let Nick Robertson go that much. And he is a skilled forward. I think he will be an everyday NHLer. So I give merit to both sides of it, which is a bit of a sucker argument, but I would say I lean a little bit more to disagreeing in that I wish he had a more of a chance with Toronto. Maybe at this point it won't happen. Definitely tradable piece. But I think he's better than he's gotten credit for in Toronto, and he should be having more of a spotlight than he's received.
Yeah, fair enough. I think, but my my counter in it is that I think they did try to give him an opportunity to get into here, and they just didn't like what they saw, or they didn't feel like it was ready to get in there. And if it's not ready to go jump into your lineup to join in an everyday NHL lineup, you can't just play the guy to play the guy. And the problem with it is that this is a team that's trying to win a Stanley Cup, and if you can't. They can't just bring guys along for the ride, is kind of what I'm getting at with this. This is a team that's trying to win a Stanley Cup, and you can't just hope a guy is going to turn out to be okay when you're trying to win that cup. You have to look to make the team the best they can. Tampa Bay, Colorado, they don't bring guys along for the ride. If the guy's not going to be able to actually make an impact, they send the guy out and sit him in the press box, or they trade them. And then on top of that, the guys that they have had in there, like you've seen evidence of it. Look what happened in the playoffs. I'm going to look at specifically Colorado with this. Look at what happened in the playoffs when their young guy in Alex Newhook was not living up to the standard that they were hoping for playoff caliber of that team. He didn't play. They sent him into the press box. He didn't play. Gordon Graham saying an opportunity on the second line, not fourth for 10 and 6 games. That straight up is a BS argument. Flat out, it's a BS argument because he did get opportunities to play with Tavares when he had come up. And the other thing to this is that if you're that special of a player, you should be able to play wherever.
Yeah, I don't disagree with you. And I think that whatever, we're going to trust the professionals to make decisions. But the one thing I would say is our professionals haven't let us out of the first round. And also, like, there is something to be said for needing to develop a little bit. Like, he's not going to come in and immediately blow everyone away. And there have been good Nick Robertson moments. Like, it hasn't been all a blunder. Like, he's come up, he's looked like dangerous at times. I know the defense can be slightly suspect, but he has the speed to make up for it. I don't know. Look, I'm not an NHL level critiquer of talent, but then again, I also don't look at Sheldon Keefe as the best to do it either. Like, this guy is definitely on the hot seat. I know it's game one. He should be on the hot seat from the beginning of this season, though. I don't care if they went and blew out the Habs 8-0. The seat needs to be hot right away for Sheldon Keefe. Beyond the X's and O's, this guy can't seem to motivate his players or get them in a confident mindset. So I know I'm going completely off tangent here, talking about Keefe when the topic is talking about Nick Robertson, but I tie it back into, do I even trust the Leafs management to make the right choices right now with a young player like Robertson? And I don't truly know. But what I am confident in is that Nick Robertson will be an everyday player in the NHL. Again, maybe not like a mass point producer. I think that's kind of unlikely, but a guy who stays in the lineup routinely throughout the later years of his career. And again, we've needed that at times in our bottom six when there's been injuries, when there's been a little bit of uncertainties. We just haven't let the guy run. And I know what Gordon's saying, that, you know, he's going to look better in your top six, but I also get what you're saying, where you don't want to roll that out to him immediately. I'm just kind of in the middle ground saying I at least would have liked to see more sample size for him. And he's at a very, very, very short leash, I should say, for a player that good.
Yeah, well, I mean, as far as Sheldon Keefe goes in that situation, I don't agree with you on that. I think that he is able to get them going. I think that he is a good coach. Like, he is a good coach and guy in that locker room. I think that he has that hard side to him, but I mean, that can be a conversation for a different day. I think at game one here, we'll probably try to avoid that. Getting too far into that, we'll see how that one goes. Maybe at 10, 15, 20 games into the season, we can definitely revisit. But I'm also seeing Donnie Brasco saying that's the problem. Dubas doesn't draft for the now. He wants to develop the small guys. Can we cut the narrative of he drafts the small guys, he only loves the small guys? Goody, this is a guy who went out and traded for Jake Muzzin, and he went and got Kyle Clifford and Wayne Simmons, and he brought in Nick Foligno, and they tried out Curtis Gabriel, and they've trying out big guys in the minors. They drafted Matthew Nyes. Like, this is not a management that's afraid to go and get bigger and try different things and try different sizes and skill sets of players. So it's a garbage argument to sit here and say, oh, he's in love with skill players. You know who they just signed to be on this team, who played tonight and actually did okay, is Zack Aston Reese. They brought in the guy on a PTO. They signed him to the team full-time. It worked out. So this whole oh, we don't like big guys. We won't bring big guys. That's garbage. It's a garbage argument. It's not true. And then go to the drafting. They've drafted variations of players that they feel can be good players with the organization. And by the way, the NHL is not a league in which you can go out and just draft guys who are going to play tomorrow. You know who's not looked good and was drafted in the top 5, nowhere near where the Leafs picked this year? Shane Wright. The guy was destined to be the number 1 pick. The Montreal Canadiens passed on him. New Jersey Devils, the Arizona Coyotes, they all said, no, we're not drafting this guy. And guess what the conversation is now? Shane Wright is likely going to be a guy to play 9 games this season and go back to play in the OHL because he cannot hang in the NHL. And if a guy who was touted to be number 1 and ended up going number 4 can't hang around, how in the hell do you expect the guy drafted at 28, 37, 56 to be playing in your lineup tomorrow night? You draft to develop. What's the saying, Goody? Draft and develop. Draft and develop. Draft and, important middle word, and develop. You don't draft to play. That's not what happens. This isn't the NFL. This isn't the NBA. Guys don't play tomorrow night after the draft. Guys wait. They develop. Unless you're drafted usually in the top 3 picks, you're probably not playing that year.
That's fair. And Michael Bunting, he's a testament to that. That guy had to fight his way through the AHL and is now looking like someone who's going to steadily score between 20 and 30 goals a season. No, I agree with that. And I think especially relative to other pro sports leagues, you definitely have a grace period that's larger in the NHL for getting guys up to speed. I don't dispute any of that. And I hate to go so macro picture right now with the Leafs because, in the greater scheme of things, whatever they're doing isn't working. And I guess, drafting and developing is part of it. Nick Robertson's a testament to that. That's a very skilled player that wasn't ready, in their opinion, to be thrown into the lineup. But this also is a team that needs a little bit of a shakeup. So I think that, to touch on what you were saying earlier, if you can take a Nick Robertson and maybe even some other talent and flip it into a player that is ready to go into the lineup, and someone else can go and develop Robertson and whoever else, and we get a player who's ready now to go and stir things up, we need to do that. I'm tired of the passiveness. You know what the issue is, Zach? Is I notice it with old Toronto sports teams. We're always good going into trade deadline, but not great. And the things that would make us great don't get touched on. Yeah. We wanted a big right-handed defenseman at trade deadline. Okay, we're not going to do that. We're going to pick up some depth forwards, some other guys to fill in, and then we'll figure it out from there. Leafs out of the first round. The Blue Jays, okay, we need a big pitcher, so instead we'll get Mitch White and then Whit Merrifield. Okay, well, that's not really doing the thing, but okay, great, out of there in the first round. The Raptors, okay, we need a center. We'll just get, what's his name? The guy that Young, Thaddeus Young. We'll pick up Thaddeus Young, and then that'll do it. Okay, no, that's not a center. You're out of the first round. There's just a reluctance to put chips on the table in Toronto for all the teams. Like, it's driving me nuts. Like, just do something gutsy. Live and die by it. Like, it's driving me nuts, man. You're definitely right that there needs to be an aspect of development, but we've been developing players that haven't been doing it. We need to take some of the development and mortgage it for guys who can now compete.
Right. We do have a super chat here. We don't want to miss these. So Max Sentius Decimus, thank you for the super chat. Hopefully this animation plays and doesn't completely ruin the stream here. But Goody, we left the super chat, by the way, the Campbell super chat, just an ode to Jack Campbell. And I don't know if you saw the chat earlier. Jack Campbell, first 3 shots against that he faced there, 2 goals against.
No way. You called this, man.
Yeah, I said today, Jack Campbell might fall off a cliff in Edmonton. I don't even think it's because he's Jack Campbell. I think it's because he's in Edmonton. I think that's just a valid thing. Dan Freeman saying, sorry, boss, my phone died, but I'm back. Had a point about Maugan. Dubas laid out the plan for him, and it included him going to Swiss to build him up because he's very talented. I agree with that. I think that once he got here, they kind of realized that this probably wasn't going to work immediately, and they just set out like, let's develop the guy and see what happens. So I think that there's different things like that where you can look at and they say that like that guy stepped in here and he's done pretty well.
I got a question for you, Philly.
Yeah.
I know I'm going with just sort of the overall view here, but with this being a divisional game, the Habs are one of the few gimmies I'd see now in the division. I know the Bruins took a step back, but still they're going to be like the culture Bruins for the most part still, not the powerhouse they were, but Buffalo got a lot better. Ottawa got a hell of a lot better. And then you need teams like Montreal who are fresh out of the lottery to be your guaranteed 2-point nights. Are you worried about the Atlantic Division schedule?
No, that's a good point. It is a good, interesting thing to look at. I do actually completely understand and respect where you're coming from with that, but I still think this Leafs team is going to be good. You didn't hear this hot take either, and this one wasn't actually too ridiculous in the chat in terms of what people thought or how they felt about it. But my prediction is that by the end of the season, Samsonov will be the number one. Samsonov, actually someone corrected me, so I should probably say that properly going forward. Samsonov will be the number one goaltender of the Leafs. And I didn't think that was because Matt Murray didn't or wasn't going to have a good season. My hope is actually that he does have a good season. It was just that Samsonov beats him out of it. Where do you stand on that? Do you have any prediction? Do you have any thoughts about that prediction that I threw out there?
I hate to fade you, but I think that Matt Murray's the guy. I don't see like it being a guaranteed thing. Of course, nothing's guaranteed, but I don't know. Matt Murray looked good throughout the preseason. He's obviously got a Stanley Cup under his belt, still relatively young. And tonight, we're looking at a game where he allows 4 goals, but I still don't think he played poorly at all. Contrary to some people in the chat, I really don't think he played that bad. Like he was honestly for most of the game playing above average. And then we've talked about it time and time again. The Leafs don't need a top 5 goaltender to get it done with how impressive they are with the forwards. But tonight wasn't his fault. He's looked good in preseason. He's got a better resume than Samsonov. I still think that he'll be the guy for the Leafs personally.
Okay, fair enough. I just kind of think that Samsonov would be the guy to take that job from him is kind of my prediction, but fair enough. I understand. Understand the other side.
Maybe it could happen.
Yeah, I just think like he's 25. He's coming here. Thinks he has an opportunity to prove himself. He was never a bad goaltender where he was or had bad stretches, and I think that being in this opportunity in a place that he wanted to be in, he made it evident that he wanted to be here and be a part of this. I think he could have an opportunity to take over and actually jump into the lead and be the number one guy here. So we'll see. We'll see how it plays out. I'm interested to see how he does tomorrow because he is facing Washington, his old team. So that'll be interesting as he goes into that. This is the problem with Murray, and I just see it in the chat there. Carm Capo saying, shoot high glove side on Murray. It's probably going in, and Muzzin looked slow. One thing I will say, and this was one of the problems that Matt Murray had when he was in Pittsburgh, and is one of the reasons they kind of had to let him go. His glove hand is sometimes just next to non-existent. It's just not there. He gets real tight up high, and his glove basically just doesn't operate as he's not utilizing it. He just gets tense and then uses shoulders up into his neck basically, and then loses his glove hand. That's not something you can do. And as soon as that goal went in by Caufield, where he basically it was a nice shot, but look at where the puck finished in the net. Finished basically in the middle of the net. It was going past his shoulder, right? That was shades of James Reimer with the chicken wing not using his glove.
Yeah, it's definitely a point of concern. And of course, like you look at the guy's track record, I know people are pointing it out in the chat, like Ottawa made the right decision. The Pens made the right decision. Like I'm highlighting the positive in his career. This guy does have shaky points. And above all else, the Leafs just need a little bit of consistency. And if there's that one weak spot being his glove hand, like people will pick that apart. We saw the Habs do it tonight. I still think he's a decent goaltender, but you're right. That could be a recurrent issue. I hope he's young enough that you can still fix something like that and it's not completely ingrained, but you're right. It's been a huge issue for him so far in his career.
Yeah, so hopefully it's something that they can fix and kind of turn around. Let's get into this conversation. The Leafs will be over the cap when Timothy Mulligan returns. And in that being said, also Dahlstrom and Jamie Benn, or Jordy Benn, are also on injured reserve or LTIR or started season opener injured reserve. When those guys come back, or when those guys come back of injured reserve, there's going to be a lot of extra cap. The Leafs are currently at 20 out of 23 max players that they can have on a roster. Guys are going to have to go, and it's not just going to be by waiving them, because you don't want to just lose guys for the sake of losing them. You'd like to get rid of some of these guys in the trade. Who is that guy for you that goes first player out the door?
Take a wild guess. Take a wild guess. Gordon, cover your ears. I'm sending out Justin Hall for sure. I don't know what kind of return you get for Justin Hall, though. Someone just eating cap essentially at that point. But yeah, I think we've talked about this.
There's two teams dumb enough to trade for him. You can probably guess the one.
Yeah, I don't know if there's anyone dumb enough to trade for Justin Hall.
Come on, Arizona for sure.
Okay, yeah, I forgot about Arizona, but yeah, that. Even then, like, I feel like you're not gonna really get anything back, but to get anything for him at this point, it's addition through subtraction. Get that guy off the roster. I always see people too attribute Jake Muzzin's issues to Justin Hall, and if they're like, oh well, if he wasn't with Hall, then Muzzin could really like be more of a roamer out there on the ice, like he wouldn't be as tied down. I don't know if I fully agree with that. I think Muzzin has his issues now as well. But yeah, I'm open to trading a lot of guys. Hall would be on that list. I wouldn't be fully opposed to trading Kerfoot if you get some size in return with some comparable skill set. Honestly, man, it'd be easier to just name the players that I'm not willing to move. Johnny T can't move because of the non-trade clause. Austin Matthews isn't going anywhere. I don't want to move Mitch Marner, even though there's still a good amount of people that, despite his skill in the Leafs nation, would still move him. Mm-hmm. And William Nylander, I don't really want to touch either. Like I want to keep the high end skill that we have because we've developed it. It's like world class. But those are the only players. And Morgan Riley, honestly, I say it all the time. People think I'm cracked for saying this. He is such a valuable contract. He's still like you can't just throw garbage out there and expect good things to come back. Like eventually you need to make a blockbuster. Like, could Morgan Riley turn into another solid defenseman and like the depth forward of your dreams? And would that be better for your team?
Yeah, but like, are you going to trade Morgan Riley for a depth forward? You're going to need the goaltending. And Griffin Harrington saying, day one, time to smash the panic button. Yeehaw.
You're smashing it, man.
But Goody, the thing is for me is that you need defensemen. You don't need You don't need depth forwards or like it. If you're trading Morgan Riley, you're likely trying to get back some type of top six forward, not necessarily a bottom six forward, and
right.
You're trying to add to your D. I worry that moving a guy like Morgan Riley, or looking at moving a guy like Morgan Riley, you're just immediately making your defense worse. Like, whoever comes back on defense, you have to replace that defense with better than what Riley's going out, whether that be in one person or two people who combine to be better than him. But now you're almost looking at trying to replace it with more pieces by moving him out.
Like, and I'm not okay. My point is not that we should trade Morgan Riley. My point is more to say that I don't take him off the table. There are certain guys that I do take off the table, but Morgan Riley, I think that even Kate, whatever, we'll throw Nylander in there too, because he's got a good enough contract as well, where I think you could get some serious return for that. So those are two really high end players that teams would be willing to shovel out some assets that could maybe help you out in between the pipes. Maybe it's a goaltender then. But I would imagine it'd be a package deal to address multiple needs, because yeah, the blue line could be a little bit better. The goaltending definitely needs to be addressed. Like, if you are willing to at least put these pieces on the table on the trade block and see what's out there, you might be surprised and find a situation that's better for your team. There's literally like three guys who are off the table for potential trades. And that's Austin Matthews, Johnny T by virtue of his contract, and Mitch Marner. I'm just of the belief that you will need to make risky decisions to get benefit. And the Leafs just have been definitely reluctant to do that. But I think it's time to consider it if you can't get things into a comfortable phase with this team. But we know it's not even regular season. I'm not overreacting to a game one loss. I'm just saying the playoffs are where we need results. We've failed to build a team that can succeed in the playoffs, even though we've built teams that can succeed in the regular season.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe it's worth shopping around with some players that you don't want to part with, because that's what it's going to take to be better.
Yeah, I just think my problem is that moving Riley is you got to replace him with another Morgan Riley and then get your D better as well.
Okay, and I hate to be this much of a pessimist, but why do we need to replace Morgan Riley? We don't win.
Well, because removing Morgan Riley, he's your best defenseman that you have. Your defense gets immediately worse.
Okay, and this is such like a fickle point by me, but like, but why do we need to? It's okay. So we're saying we're going to lose our dynamic without Riley. Our dynamic has led nowhere.
No, I'm saying our defense is not good, and losing Morgan Riley makes our defense 10 to 20 times worse.
Okay, but again, I'm not saying trade him for a top 6 forward. I'm saying that if there's an opportunity where again, it would feel weird to trade him for more defensemen, but if you could get like, okay, Morgan Riley and like a second round pick or something for 2 top 4 defensemen off of a team that isn't going to make the playoffs, maybe it's worth thinking about. And one of them has good contract term.
I think I'm not a GM. I think still saying, no, because the problem with a Goody is like, what needs to come back to this team, or what needs to be a part of this team, isn't a group of good defensemen. It's that one guy. It's the one guy. I keep looking at Colorado, Cale Makar, Tampa Bay, Victor Hedman, St. Louis, Alex Pietrangelo, Washington, John Carlson, Boston when they won even back a while ago, Zdeno Chara. Like these teams, Pittsburgh, Chris Letang, these teams had the one guy, the guy who is an exceptional defenseman, or maybe it's not just an exceptional defenseman, but it's that deal breaker defenseman who is so far above and beyond, like your number one. He's the guy, and they all have that. We don't have that, and what we have in Morgan Riley is the guy who the majority of those teams have as their number 2 to accompany those guys alongside them. And getting rid of Morgan Riley, now you're looking for a 1 and a 2, because TJ Brody is probably, yes, he's good, but he's not as good as Morgan Riley. And so he's that step back. So you're going to look at, like, he's probably a 2B. Morgan Riley is a 2A. You're just missing the 1. So my thing would be, you got to go out and get, if you're going to try to get defensemen, or you're going to try to get an improvement on your team, it's got to be in the defense. And you can't trade a defenseman for a better defenseman in return.
Yeah, and I get that logic. And you're right. The one thing I'm just trying to point out here is that it's so easy for me to count the players I wouldn't trade versus the players I would trade, because I do feel like I'm at a point where I'm not trying to protect the dynamic anymore. And I still acknowledge that there's people in the chat saying this is a game 1 overreaction loss. Look, like obviously the game 1 loss is what has me in a more negative mindset. Yeah. The reality is also that, we're not, we'd win the President's Trophy, which I know is a bad omen, but even with that great of a regular season.
Don't do that. Colorado intentionally lost it.
Like, yeah, it's cursed, but at the same time, like, our issues are in the playoffs. And we pointed out a quote, I forget who made it last season, but hockey's the one sport where you need to build a team to win in the regular season, and then you need to build a second team to win in the playoffs. And we've really failed to build that second team. So again, like, it's not going to be some game 1 loss that dictates how I feel about the team. It's going to be how we're going to be looking towards playoffs. But of course, yes, the negative mindset comes from a really bad divisional loss to open up the season tonight. But I don't want to overreact to it. These are macro observations.
Mm-hmm. No, I understand. I think it's less so from my perspective, though, about changing the dynamic with Morgan Riley going out, and more just about the team. The team immediately gets worse. It's just, that's what it is, moving Morgan Riley out. Even if you bring in 2 top 4 guys, if they're not a 1-2 guys, then the team's worse. So that's kind of where my hesitancy comes from there. Because if you're going to make any moves to get bigger or better with it, Donnie, you actually got to give up on the whole, like, building goes back to drafting thing. That's just like, Guess which 2 defensemen we just signed in this offseason to stay here and be here? Oh, I don't know. 2 young guys we just drafted not too long ago, and Rasmus Sandin and Timothy Mulligan. Like, give it a break, man. The drafting garbage is just so pathetic and just over abused. Like, ridiculous. Oh, you gotta draft. Like, who the hell? Like, come on, give it a rest, man. That's a joke. It's like, come on, man. We literally drafted 2 guys who are in the lineup playing right now. Oh, also, Morgan Riley, longest tenured Leaf, who also was drafted. Not by Dubas, but he was drafted. I will address this one because it does tie into what we're talking about right now. Super chat here from Maxentius Decimus. What's worse, Dursey last night or this? Did you see that Dursey play that he had last night, Goody? We'll do 2 parts. See it. Okay, so Dursey basically gave up like a pizza that ended up being. We were on opposite sides of the game. I had LA to win. You had Vegas to win, but it was just a pizza that gave up to Vegas, and they end up turning it around and scoring with minimal time left in the game to win.
Oh, that was the stone goal, walk right?
Off. Yeah, and that was a Dursey pizza. But the other part of this is Sean Dursey. Was he not traded in the Kyle Clifford trade? Or not Kyle Clifford, Jake Muzzin trade?
We drafted him in 2018.
Yeah.
Yeah. And he's a local. I think he's from Mississauga too. He was like a local kid. We drafted him. Again, he was an undersized defenseman, so I didn't really like read into it too much when we traded him. I was like, okay, probably doesn't seem like he cracked the roster anyways. We've been a good team for a while. But yeah, man, hindsight, not good. That's where I start to look at some of. I like Dubas. I'm not going to go down that rabbit hole, but yeah, letting Dursey go in hindsight is a little troubling, even though that was a pizza delivered last night.
Yeah, he is sick. Dursey is sick. He will be sick. And then to the people I'm seeing about, you win cups based on drafting, though, not trading.
What are your thoughts?
Like, guys, look at the players in the lineup who are here from drafting them. Whatever you want to say about, oh, that guy was a gift. Matthews, drafted. Nylander, drafted. Marner, drafted. Engvall, drafted. Like, we moved on from guys who were playing here, who were drafted here as well. Zach Hyman, Connor Brown, Nazem Kadri, we ended up having to trade, which obviously in hindsight looks bad. But that being said, I can understand why the move was made in the moment. And you can't look at it like here's the thing. You have to separate the result of Nazem Kadri winning a Stanley Cup from what he had done here in Toronto. If you're going to pay that guy a bunch of money to be your third line center when you know you're paying a whole bunch of money to guys playing in your top two lines, and Nazem Kadri cannot play more than 2 playoff games every single year, that hurts your team. Now, I'm not here to dig into the Nazem Kadri contract. It obviously still looks bad in hindsight. I completely agree with that. I completely get it. But they drafted these guys, and they ended up going on to other places because the Leafs can't afford to keep them. That's what it is. It's not. This is part of the problem with the NHL, and this is not just a Leafs problem. I will legitimately say this if I was a fan of any team, and I think that this can be universally agreed upon, and part of the reason I say that is because I've heard this discussed by numerous other sources and people, including insiders and analysts and all this kind of stuff. Like Chris Johnson has talked about it. Chris Johnson has talked about it a ton, and it's the NHL salary right now is currently set up to punish teams for drafting well. If you draft guys well and you have an abundance of players that come through that you've drafted well, and now you have to pay them a lot of money because you drafted them well, and then you have to lose them because you can't afford to pay them because you've also drafted other guys well, like that's a problem. That's a fundamental problem of the NHL salary cap and how the things are built.
And that's weird too, because usually making the league draft friendly will help out smaller markets, and smaller markets are not going to be able to, like, that rule or that setup is going to hurt them. But like, you're not going to win in free agency if you're Arizona. If you're a team like that, you're just not going to. So I feel like not being able to retain your draft picks because of issues with contract setup, like that, the NHL wants to protect small markets and grow the game. I agree with you. That's really counterintuitive to the way that they want to grow the league.
Yeah, it is. I just like one of the things that they're looking at too, by the way, with if people are going to continue to go, one thing that's hilarious in my opinion is that everyone sits and says the Leafs have cap problems, the Leafs have all these issues, and they're not going to sign guys, and they can't retain guys, and they can't do this. Vancouver has a worse cap situation right now than the Toronto Maple Leafs, and they do not have an Austin Matthews, a Mitch Marner, a William Nylander, a John Tavares, and they're a bad team. That's just one example. I get it. But you know who else is pressed up against the cap? Tampa Bay, Colorado, like top teams.
Stanley Cup champions.
Like, yeah, they're pressed up against the cap in very similar, if not the exact same cap situations as the Leafs are. So I think it's just nonsense from that perspective to be like, oh, the Leafs have a cap problem. No. Many teams around here do. And if you want to go to the whole situation with Martin Digo saying, Zach, you're saying that drafting well is a bad thing, smarten up. Man, people actually just don't listen. I actually just don't. This year, I don't care. I'm calling people out on their shit. If you're just going to say reckless comments without listening to stuff, you're going to get called out for it. If you listen to what I said, that is not it. The whole point... Goody, go ahead.
I was going to say, dive into it, because I'm sure a lot of people understand what you're referencing, but like to talk about how the draft is making it hard to retain players, just to justify the point a bit, like... Okay.
Like, was I not clear with it?
Well, I feel like a little bit, but like okay, so how exactly, because no, I understand. I've heard like people discuss this at large as well. But what is it about drafting exactly? What kind of contract situation does it leave you in where it's not going to be conducive? Because, I mean, clearly if you have good players, you need to sign them. But what is it particularly about drafting?
Okay, so I'm going to go through this right now with a current example as it's happening in this moment. The Ottawa Senators right now are currently having to pay some of their young guys who are coming up and finishing their entry-level contracts. They have done a pretty decent job of drafting either defensemen or forwards in that organization to come through and have to be paid. They had to pay Brady Tkachuk, Tim Stützle, they're going to, like, Norris, Shabbat. These guys are going to have to be paid or have been paid in there. And they've drafted those guys well and actually had to shell out money because what did they become? Good players that deserved money. So now you're in a situation where a guy that you've drafted and brought through your system has elevated to a level where they're demanding their market value that they can get if they were to leave the organization and go to other teams, because other teams, A, would be willing to pay those, or B, are already paying those to comparable playoffs.
So in terms of solution, like, is the issue, you think, a little bit? Because I agree, like, if you draft well, you should be able to have like exemptions on contracts and whatnot. Like, I know other sports, like the NBA is good at protecting drafted contracts. Like, rookies can only qualify for so much. I know it's similar in the NHL to a certain degree, but like, what is the solution to that? Just having a higher cap in the NHL, or like a soft cap?
Soft cap. In my opinion, it's a soft cap, because the problem is that the cap was brought in to protect the teams that can't spend the money from getting outspent, like in baseball. Look at the New York Yankees and the Oakland Athletics. Like, even the Moneyball comparison, it's going to be very cliche, but it's very simple to understand from that perspective. The Yankees are capable of spending, let's say, $500 million a year. I'm just as a sample. The Oakland Athletics are capable of spending $80 million a year. The Yankees spend $500 million a year. The Oakland Athletics spend $80 million a year. Now, there's obviously going to be a player discrepancy between the two, a skill level discrepancy because of how much these guys are able to afford between one team to the other. That's part of the problem, right? Where they can do that and they can spend that money. The NHL tried to avoid that and avoid a situation where there's the Yankees who can spend up to $500 million and an Athletics who can only spend up to $80 million by putting a cap and a floor to push everyone into a middle ground. The problem that you run into now is that the teams who are willing to spend that $500 million and are only allowed to spend the 80 something million that the cap is right now are all spending the 80 million. And the teams that suck or are in low markets or small markets or just don't have the funding, don't have the ownership, who are able to spend the 80 million that they were expected to, are only spending $40 million now because they're saving money on this and they're just hitting the floor. Arizona is a prime example of that team that's doing it year after year after year. They're trading for dead contracts on guys who are literally retiring so that they can get themselves to the floor by rostering bad teams and hoping to go back to the draft. There becomes at some point no advantage to this, where you're basically just limiting the upper echelon teams who are drafting well or trying to sign players or trying to trade players and go on about these things. Yeah, Alexei also mentioning, what about the Pirates, 36 mil? Yeah, that's even better example. I was more just throwing out sample numbers, but yeah, that's even better. But the problem now is that Arizona continues to be perpetually bad, and they're refusing to spend more money because they can just exist in the NHL the way that it's currently set up. And now it's not to say that they just flame out and disappear if it was what it could be, if it is what I'm proposing. It's more just like nothing's going to change for them. They're going to spend the same amount of money because that's all they want to spend, and that's it. And that's fine. If that's what you want to spend, that's what you want to spend. But don't limit the other teams. Because you know what teams would go past the cap every single year? The Leafs, the Rangers, the Habs, the Lightning, the Avalanche, the Blues would probably go past it, the Capitals, the Penguins. Like, these teams would blow past it every single year and pay a tax on that, which in turn can go to the owner, or can go to the league and go to the owners of the smaller teams, of the smaller franchises. That, in my opinion, is where you start to revenue share and give them their money back and try to even the playing field from that. They can take that money from the teams who are willing to spend it and spend past. That's how you even things out, in my personal opinion. And then what that solves, I'm just going to quickly wrap up on it. Of course. What that solves is that when these teams who are good and put money into their drafting, their scouting, etc., and they draft good players, like with Tampa, let's go to Tampa and just stay off the Leafs because people will start to get way too emotionally involved in it. But go to Tampa, they draft Anthony Cirelli, Braden Point. They go out and actually make a trade for Sergachev. But then Ross Colton, Stamkos was obviously drafted a while ago, Hedman, Kucherov, Vasilevsky. They end up getting into all these situations where they've got to pay all these guys, and then they have to get rid of other guys, i.e. Palat and McDonough, because they need to pay their other guys now. So you're just basically looking at this and going, oh, we have to get rid of this guy. We have to get rid of that guy to get this. They need to allow you to be rewarded for drafting well, is essentially what I'm getting at. If that rant makes sense.
Yeah, no, it does. And that's why I wanted, because I understood what you were saying. I just wanted to dive into it a bit more because I didn't know if everyone else in the chat was fully cluing into the solution that, you would see as appropriate. And it is a bit of a loaded solution, but I still understand. And I think that having a soft cap in there would make it just more competitive, probably better for hockey in the end of it. And you avoid situations where drafting well ends up hurting you. So no, I see it as well. And I think that the NHL does a lot to try to grow the game. It's kind of a trial and error thing, but yeah, no, I think those are valid things to point out. I just wanted you to go into depth with it. And I thought that was a good explanation.
Yeah, drafting is extremely important, and that's not what I'm saying in terms of it's not important. The problem becomes that you get punished for drafting well, and you can't have that. The NHL, in a sense, starts to look at it and go, oh, it almost implies you get punished for drafting well. That's part of the problem with it, where they don't reward you for it because you can't retain guys. That's my concern with it. It's not even a problem with it. It's just my concern long term. how is that going to affect things where you can't just keep guys? We do have a super chat I didn't get to yet here. We'll talk about this. Then we got to get into one other thing I see people talking about in the chat. Then we'll get into our play of the day and obviously grades of the game. So super chat here from Maxentius Decimus. Shout out Maxentius for the super chat. It's not playing. Computer is just toast right now, man. I don't even know. My computer on my screen is just like, the fan is going nuts. The screen is all laggy and frozen everywhere. I don't even know. Like, this is legitimately the last day with this computer. I'm telling you guys right now. He says, who is the best new Leafs player tonight?
The one that caught me the most off guard was Maugan, just because I like, it was so laughable when we picked this guy up. I was like, oh, another 5'10" skill forward. Way to go, Kyle Dubas. Like, happy that I'll never see this guy. I definitely wrote him off. And he looked good, like surprisingly good. And I know in the preseason, 8 points, 4 goals, like that's really solid. And to see it translate at least somewhat here in the season opener. And he looked dangerous too. I know he had a couple like blunders, or at least one really bad one, but overall, I thought that he stood out to me. I don't think he's going to be consistently the guy that I'm like, oh, that's the best new Leaf. But tonight, I thought he kind of stole the show to narrow it down to this game for new Leafs at least.
It's Dennis Maugan for me as well. He fit seamlessly into that second line. He looked good. He looked confident with the puck. He was possessing it a lot. There was a lot of times I was looking up and he had the puck. He finished some hits, which he's obviously not going to blow anybody up, but he just didn't look afraid of anything. I was pretty happy with Dennis Maugan tonight. I think he looked good. He got on the board. And if he can stay there and continue to contribute to this offense and continue to put up some points, he's going to have a hard time coming out. And I don't know. It'll be interesting to see how that whole Dubas, Marchment, Maugan love triangle plays out over the course of the season, because if that guy can stay in the lineup and stay here consistently, hey, does the tables turn on that whole Kyle Dubas situation? Like, where do we go there?
I don't know, man. He's going to need like at least like 15 goals to make me think about that.
Fair enough. Okay, another thing that I see here, also just wanted to shout out Dan Freeman. He said a little earlier, if you're not spending, I'm not yelling, I just want this one heard. He said it all caps. If you are not tight against the cap, you aren't trying hard enough. Yeah, fair enough. Like, nobody's playing Moneyball in the NHL here. Nobody's doing that. RJWI, Zack, what about Nicky Bob tonight? Yeah, your boy looked good in a suit there, RJWI. Looked pretty good from the press box eating popcorn. I don't know about that one, but he didn't get in the lineup, and the guy playing in front of him, Mr. Gino Maugan, gets himself on the board of the goal. So interesting to see. I'm going to put like a Gino Maugan animation.
Get the animation cooking.
Yeah, I'm gonna make something for this. So we got to. Okay, and then James Dean, your computer is worse than Muzzin. Literally, guys, I don't know what to do about this. Does anybody know if there's any way to just completely clean your Mac and just like I'm editing photos and videos and stuff on this all the time, and it's just cooking this computer. Like, this thing is fried. If there's any way to just like refresh it and bring it back to life, let me know. It's a Mac. It's a MacBook laptop. Because otherwise, new computer tomorrow. That's just what
if anyone wants to drop a $2,000 super chat, feel free to right now, so Zack can go down to Best Buy tomorrow and figure it out.
Yeah, literally, we'll do that, and we will never have stream problems again. I shouldn't even promise that, because I'm like terrified that I go and buy something after someone throws some super chat at me like that, and then I come on the next stream, my computer's like the exact same, it's all buggy and shit. I'm like, oh no.
They're coming for your head.
Yeah. The other one that I wanted to address here, there was multiple people talking about it, but Cole Palmer said, Zack, brother, please talk about that Muzzin Hall pairing, please. Goody, I'll let you start with this.
I don't know, dude. If there was ever if you ever asked me, why do you want Sheldon Keefe fired? You can only point out one thing. I would ask to point out two things. Those two clowns playing together. That's the only thing I would have to say. Is you want a reason why I think that Sheldon Keefe might be on the hot seat is making repeated decisions like that. I know that there's not a world of alternatives, but at the same time, like that's just been a failed dynamic. I get they have nights where you're like, oh, maybe it's actually like, better than we think. It always blows up. Like maybe it'll last for like 3-4 games. I don't like it. Like I've never liked it. I think Hall just doesn't belong in the NHL, honestly. And I know some people are kind of coming around to him in certain regards. And it's weird too. Muzzin, I know he had some terrible mistakes tonight, but there was other parts of the game where I was like, oh, he actually has some pop. Like he's making plays. Like, I don't know, but then he makes terrible blunders. Like these guys are a roller coaster to watch. I don't think they complement each other properly. I'm not a fan of the pairing. And I wasn't, a year ago, yesterday. I won't be tomorrow. Still don't like it. What about you?
Yeah, without mincing words, that pairing sucks. That final goal that was scored by Josh Anderson, it was just a bad play all around. You're looking at Justin Hall kind of getting lost in the defensive zone there, as well as Muzzin. It wasn't just one or the other. It was both of them at the same time. They kind of chasing around, not able to get in good position to be able to actually stop anything. They can't get the puck out of the zone. And then ultimately it turns into Jake Muzzin throwing Little Caesars hot and ready right up the middle, and it's on Josh Anderson's stick. It's in the back of the net. Matt Murray has sunburn, and we're at center ice. It's just a tough way to end the game watching those guys roll out there. Jake Muzzin, I thought, started the game well. He was hitting. He looked physical. He didn't look out of it. And then it's not to say he looked out of it by the end of it. It just, all of a sudden it was like, oh shit, we're period 3 and he can't hold up. And it was like, well, what just happened? Like, you just started off well. Like, why are we doing this again? So that was just tough. It's tough for that D pair. And I go back to that whole trade conversation. He's the guy for me who's gone. Like, Hall's the guy for me who's gone. And part of that is because you're not trading Gio, Brody, Riley. You probably can't trade Muzzin unless you're looking at a team who's just willing to hold on to some cap. You don't want to trade Sandin or Liljegren strictly from the perspective of you kind of just sign these guys as guys to be here as future pieces and guys who could probably be here in, like, actually making an impact probably this season. You probably promised them an opportunity to do that. I mean, now if the right trade comes along, you don't shy away from it. But I don't know, man. It's just, that's the easy piece to move. I would probably be willing to part ways with one of Sandin or Liljegren if we had to, if the right piece came back the other way. But you're going to have to get rid of cap. You have to get rid of cap. And you have Jamie... Damn, man. I keep saying Jamie Benn, and I know it's not Jamie Benn. Just please, every time I say that, like, correct me. It is Jordy Benn.
Yeah.
Very different players.
Okay, I got to ask you, though, to rewind there for a second. Like, if you had to, separate with one of them, either Liljegren or Sandin, who you sending out the door, if it's up to you?
Oh, that's
I know a little bit depends on, like, who's coming back in, like, in terms of dominant side of the ice, but just in a general sense.
That's the
like,
thing, right?
Yeah.
Liljegren's the right-handed guy.
I'm keeping Liljegren, if that helps you out at all. I would go with that side personally.
Yeah. I don't know. The thing is, like, they both, in my opinion, have that potential of being the guys who are just could turn out to be sick. And, like, Sandin scares me a little bit if we let him go, because I feel like he could be that piece that just bites you in the ass in the future. Like, he could be that piece that just, like, leaves and all of a sudden you're like, oh, wait a minute, we traded that guy. Like, think about this. This is one trade that terrifies me. And I talked to one of the guys in the office about Alex Moretto. I was talking to him about it because he's a Habs fan. You know who they traded for Jonathan Drouin? Mikhail Sergachev.
Oh, man. That is bad.
Drouin is sitting in the press box tonight, was watching that game. Healthy scratch. Like, not because he's injured or anything. Like, healthy scratch. And Sergachev went on to win 2 Stanley Cups. Just got paid. Like, that man got the bag because he's a very good defender. some of that stuff is I'm just like, oh, like, do we want to get rid of that and have a Sergachev situation? It scares the living hell out of me, man.
I'm happy that we were able to throw like a subtle jab at the Habs in this conversation.
Yeah, I know.
Luke Campanella in the chat saying we're already talking about trades. Yeah, man, you've missed a painful chat. We just get to this inevitable point on a painful night with the Leafs where we just start to evaluate and look in the mirror a little bit like, what the hell? But I don't know, man. We're not trying to overreact. I still think it'll still be a great season for the Leafs. It just sometimes for me, it comes back to Keefe, Zach. Like, you know that I don't like Sheldon Keefe. Like, I know people are going to say, you don't know what you're talking about. You don't know this. You don't know that. Whatever, man. Whatever. We'll see if Sheldon Keefe brings us to the glory land. I hope he does. But I would love to see them shake up the head coaching position and see how that affects the players on the ice before we do anything too drastic in terms of trading. I don't know. We'll see.
Yeah, I don't think it's that you don't know what you're talking about. I just disagree. That's just more what it is. I understand what you're saying. I just disagree. That's all. Like, no disrespect. I just disagree.
No, and that's fair. I just feel like people will be like, Keefe's a good coach. Like, I hear that a lot. Like, and Zach, you're the first guy to say it. I just don't know if he's got like the emotional connection with the team where he's able to fire them up properly or get them to play within an identity. Like a guy like John Tortorella, Barry Trotz, Bruce Boudreau, like these guys like tend to get their teams to get an identity. Like even Bruce Cassidy, I don't know. Like there's no identity with Sheldon Keefe yet, and he's got no resume outside the Leafs. But I'm not going to go down this rabbit hole, bro. I'm not going to right now.
No. Also, Vancouver up 3-0 in the second period.
I saw that.
Are the Oilers bus? Are the Oilers hard for Bedard? Maybe.
Man, I'm just pissed I didn't bet on the Canucks. I was talking about it, remember?
I know. All right, well, we got to get those in. All right, let's get to the awesome Matthews play of the day. Nope. Dude, my computer's playing the wrong animations when I click the button. And now it won't go away. Oh, good.
Last day with this Mac.
This is literally last day. Yo, I'm so happy that people are in here watching this. This is the most bootleg stream. Goody, this in terms of video quality.
Oh, I can see it now. It's coming through on YouTube.
This is right up there with that entire episode.
I know the one you're talking about already.
Where my computer shut off and you had to save it. And then I was getting messages being like, what is Goody putting on the screen? And it was Austin Matthews.
It was the Austin Snapchat.
Yeah, dude.
That was an old time stream.
This is what this is reminding me of right now.
Oh yeah, okay, now I can see it.
Why is it just a screen of me?
Yeah. This is a curtain call right now.
Okay, Cuddy, please just tell me what was your favorite play of the day.
Michael Bunting, man. That's it. That's all I gotta say.
Just being on the ice.
Oh, I'm not even on the stream anymore.
I know.
Okay, no, there I am.
No, you're back. You're back. Don't worry.
Okay,
that's what I'm telling you. What did Bunting do to impress you tonight, Goody? What was the play?
He scored a goal, man. Put it in the net.
Okay.
Like a good Toronto boy.
Okay. RJWI just said Goody's on a 2005 webcam.
I know, bro. I trying to plug in this other webcam. It's so glitchy sometimes, but we need to get that rolling before next podcast.
Yo, I'm not going to bother playing the Grades of the Game animation because it's going to break my computer, and I'm not pulling up my calculator that I have. Let's just give some pure objective grades. I'm going to let you start. I can't get myself together. Watching this right now is absurd. My computer somehow too, the camera is like 30 seconds behind what's actually happening in real life, like on my screen. And then watching what's happening on the actual stream is like 2 minutes behind.
Man, it's absolutely madness right now with this stream. This is an all-time one. This is definitely top 3 in terms of madness on the stream. But to give it a grade, like a D minus. Like,
oh my god, a D minus to open.
Dude, it terrible. Like, just ultimate choke artistry. Like, think about it. Like, okay, you do a good job of scoring first, whatever. Man, the whole game was just, it had the eerie feeling of it. Like, no, we're not going to let the Habs beat us on opening night, are we? I get it's in their arena, but at the same time, like, you tie it up late and then you make a bad defensive blunder, you get scored on, you don't get the extra point in overtime. And like I said, when we're talking about the divisions, you got Tampa, you got Boston, you got the improved the improved Ottawa Senators, the improved Buffalo Sabres. Yeah, I got the Oilers in the Atlantic now. But you get what I'm saying. This division's like good. And the Habs are a gimme 2 points. You had to come out after a really disappointed. They're coming back from the lottery. We're coming back from a devastating first round loss. I'm not gonna like overreact, but it's a D minus effort.
Okay, fair. Yeah, fair enough. I mean, that's a tough way to open the season. I'm probably not at a D minus. I was just trying to understand what this chat said. Dan Freeman said, Philly, I already saw you answering your calculator when IT said how nasty heal you, Philly. You had me until the end part there. I don't know what just happened. I'm sorry, Dan. Just clarify what you said. I'll run it back on that comment.
Bro, Happy Gilmore in the chat saying, of course, the Habs fan at Josh Goodwin will give them a D minus. We still haven't forgot about last season, bro. Yeah, no, A+ for the Leafs tonight. Sorry, guys, my bad.
Also, just real quick, if you guys are watching, right now and you haven't subscribed or liked to this channel, make sure you do so. I saw we got up to 200 concurrent viewers today, so shout out everyone who came here. Regular season game 1, the choppiest video of all time, and we still hit 200 concurrent. Shout out everyone who came back here. We are very excited to be back for the season. Hopefully I can figure this out for tomorrow, or maybe I'll just have a new computer. Who knows? I might have to run out and just pull an emergency purchase at some point tomorrow during the day, because this is actually absurd. This isn't even just the streams that get this messed up, man. This is full-blown like video editing, my job, everything is just getting messed up. It's getting mangled. So if you guys haven't, make sure you subscribe, make sure you like. Also, shout out to Luke, who's messaging me being like, yo, video's laggy, like you should probably wrap this thing up, it's all over the place. I'm not saying this as a jab. I appreciate you so much for saying that. But, dude, we've been running for an hour and 10 minutes like this.
Thank you, Detective Luke.
And people have stuck around. So, shout out to the Leafs Digest fans. You guys are the best. My grade of the game today, Goody, it's a C-. We started slow, it got better, and then it just fell off a cliff. The goaltending was mediocre. It wasn't there. It was not everything that we kind of were needed to be able to start off the season. You're looking to get off on the right foot, get running. Matthews doesn't score. Nylander doesn't score. Great goal from Bunting from Marner there. That was awesome stuff, but it was just like everything else about the whole situation was just not good. Blowing that lead, getting back into it at the end, and then all of a sudden blowing it at the end. Michael just said, don't buy the laptop tomorrow, wait for Dubas fire, and I'll buy you one, mate. If Dubas gets fired, you're going to buy me a laptop? I'm campaigning for Dubas to be fired.
I was going to say, forget hop on the bandwagon, man.
Forget that, man. Get me the laptop.
Get him out of here.
No, Dan, don't start a fund. Don't do that. We don't need that. I appreciate it, but we don't need that. I really appreciate the support. Thank you guys. Thank you guys for hopping in. Nylander didn't score. No, Nylander did score.
Yeah.
My brain is spaghetti noodles at this point, guys. I'm trying to figure out what is going on. Paper bags tomorrow after a loss. Also, by the way, two things. First of all, we launched Habs Digest tonight. It is part of the Digest media. Now, we're not expecting you. We actually hope you don't ever go and watch their live streams when we're on at the same time as us. We hope you come back here. But if you guys could go and help support the Digest brand, and just two things for us tonight in terms of that. One, throw a subscribe on their channel. And two, comment on their video. All you need to say, Leafs Digest said the Habs suck. Just say those words. Leafs Digest says the Habs suck. Just comment that on their video. If we can get like 120 people to comment that on their video, we would greatly appreciate it. But make sure you throw them a subscribe, like their video. That would be greatly appreciated to help support the Digest brand. So shout out to Habs Digest for starting up tonight. Good night for you guys to get your first one under the belt. Hopefully our live stream will be better tomorrow. And then the other thing I'm going to say, if you guys like the stuff that I'm doing and you want to hear me talk about more NHL content, tomorrow morning at 10:30 a.m. I will be live on the Edgework YouTube channel hosting a live stream. It's going to be mostly talking about sports, NHL betting, but it'll also just be about the NHL in general with some professional bettors, some amateur bettors. And Friday as well, I'll be on with a professional bettor as well as Andy McNeil, the guy that was coming from Sportsnet. He did the Sportsnet last season. He'll be on there on Fridays. So check it out, 10:30 tomorrow morning on YouTube. I can send a reminder to the Discord if people aren't in there. But Leafs fans, thank you guys so much for tuning in here tonight. Hopefully we can figure this one out for tomorrow and be back. Goody, final words before we end this one off?
Hey, man, I'm seeing Habs Digest saying Goody is a closet Habs fan. This is straight propaganda. But
that's slander.
Cheers to Habs Digest. Congrats on launching, guys. And we're excited for your channel.
All right, guys. Thank you so much for tuning in here tonight. We will see you guys tomorrow night after the game against the Washington Capitals, game 2 of the season. Let's bounce back tomorrow. Leafs fans, thank you guys so much for tuning in. Keep believing.
Signing off.
My end animations aren't playing, bro. I'm just hitting stop stream.
No, they